On this week's episode, we talk all about accessibility.
Yes, we're going through many different things in our lives that we do or don't find accessible and explaining it, so stick around. Hello and welcome to Rare with Flair,
the podcast where two 20-somethings with the same rare disease are living our best lives. I'm your host, Cassandra.
And I'm your host, Casey.
Casey, I think I almost forgot my own name for a second.
You did? Oh, you know.
I was about to say, I'm your host, Casey. Like, what's happening?
Oh, well, maybe it's Freaky Friday and we've switched bodies.
You wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know. We'd still see the same. We wouldn't get good vision from switching bodies. Yeah, we're recording this earlier than we normally do. Maybe that's why your brain is fuzzy.
Maybe. I also, I just now, I think I got it fixed. I had an eyelash that fell in my eye as soon as we started recording, and I was like, no.
Oh, no. Eyelashes, forgetting names. It's great. But how's your life been?
You know what? It's been good. I really want to, go all out fall, but it's really hot, and I'm annoyed.
It's very hot. The high tomorrow is 100.
Are you kidding me?
No, literally 100.
That's ridiculous. Are you doing anything cute fall though? Because I am and I'm excited.
I'm going to be fall baking. Cass and I could go on and on about this.
Yes.
We want to bake all the pumpkin things, pumpkin bread and cookies. What else am I doing though? You know what I'm going to do for my nephews?
What?
I'm going to have them over and do a trick or treat hallway thing for them in my house. Yeah, so I'm excited for that. Gonna obviously go to some Halloween parties and things like that. I would love to do some other things like a corn maze or whatever, but what about you? What are your fall plans?
Well, I'm going apple picking.
Apple picking? When are you going apple picking?
Saturday.
Oh my gosh, stop.
I'm going with some of my friends. Honestly, yes, is apple picking not worth the cost? Probably. You could get probably equally fresh apples from the grocery store or even the farmer's market. But it's the experience.
Yes.
I see those memes all the time that it's I would love to pay $40 to pick rotten apples up off the ground. But it's really fun. It puts me in the fall spirit.
No, you got to get in the fall spirit. I am going to a football game and tailgating and stuff on Saturday, which is not really my jam, but it does feel very fall. You know?
That is very fall though. Football season is very fall.
Football season. It's very fall. And hey, if anybody wants to get in the fall spirit, you know what they could do? They could go back to last year and listen to our fall episode, Gray Skies, Apple Pies, and Hay Rides. Oh my.
I love that you remembered the title because you can also go back 2 years and listen to our first fall episode. Are we even doing one this year? I don't know that we are. But we'll definitely talk about it ad nauseum anyway because that's what you've come to know and love from this podcast.
That is what you've come to know and love. Any other updates from you?
Trying to think. Yeah, just
why am I talking like
that? Any other updates?
Updates.
More baking adventures. I rediscovered some passion fruit pulp in my freezer, and I was thinking ooh, I love making curd tarts. So you can make a citrus curd out of pretty much any citrus fruit. I've done it with pretty much any fruit, but I've done it with blueberries, with lemons, with limes, with cranberries. I was passion fruit would be a perfect curd, and I could pour it in a tart shell, and it would be super good. I don't know when I'm going to do that. So what about you?
Sounds so good. I have a few pop culture updates if anyone cares.
Tell.
So Cass and I are still watching SpongeBob season 3 now. Very exciting. I also am watching Schitt's Creek now, which is very funny. And I keep talking like Moira, in my everyday life. So that's a problem. And then I also discovered this new artist I love. You know how I was in the worst music funk of my life for the first half of this year. And now all of a sudden everything is happening. So I have to tell the pod. I'm obsessed with this girl named Laufey, but it's spelled Laufey. And you know what's so funny, Cass, that I discovered is she's one of my my third top artists that I love, and they all live in like Iceland or Norway. Is that not weird?
That's so perfect.
Because it's like her, Aurora, and of Monsters and Men. They're all over there. I don't really know why, but she's like a modern jazz singer, and I'm obsessed with her. And then Paramore is also maybe coming up with a new album.
Yeah. I feel like music from like Scandinavia / Iceland, like they have like a certain vibe. It's very like soft guitar indie stuff, or also just like really cute floaty vocals.
Yes.
So I feel like that's very much like in your brand, and I love it.
Apparently, it's so weird, but that is like one of my third favorite artists from that area. So, but they all sound kind of different though. They all have a different vibe.
That's true. Aurora is
similar,
very different from Monsters and Men. Yeah. True.
Yeah, but they're still, I don't know. I can't, but I agree with you. It's something about it is my vibe. I don't know.
I see it.
But anyway.
You guys, this episode is really exciting, maybe just for me, because,
No.
I don't know. Well, so, we're talking about accessibility, and we're talking about accessibility for, like, digital accessibility and also for, real world built environment accessibility. And I'm excited because this is my actual job.
Yes. I'm giving the reins to Cass a little bit on this ep because I'm like, you know everything and I know nothing. But as a person who uses, or who needs things to be accessible, that is good. And I know I wanted to give a little distinction. I know we recently did an episode about assistive tech. And obviously assistive tech helps make things accessible to us, but this is going to be different. We're going to be talking just about accessibility, what is and isn't accessible, and what accessibility really means and all of that. But Cass, you're the one. You're the one who really, this is your field.
So I'm an accessibility advisor, which basically means that I'm kind of like a consultant for some of our like tech teams at the firm that I work for. And so like I have a few different teams that I essentially consult with, and they ask me like questions about accessibility, and they help me like, define issues, and like I look at designers that make designs, and I try to make sure that the designs that they have in mind are gonna be beneficial for accessibility. But like that aside though, I about assistive tech versus accessibility, like what Casey was just saying, like like you're totally right on, and like assistive tech is like what we, the people with disabilities, use in order to try and like get things done in our daily lives. But it doesn't really matter if we're using something that is is helping us to see the page or not, because if the page itself is not made accessibly, it's not really going to help us at all. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but like, do you know what accessibility is?
I mean, I guess what's funny about me, side tangent, I'm always bad at defining words even when I know what they mean. I'm bad at putting things into words, but I guess accessibility would be something that everyone can, there's a word I'm looking for, that everyone can, I'm so bad at thinking of words. The word I was looking for is not use, but that's a word, I guess. Yeah. Everyone can, what's the word?
I think the word is in the word. Everyone can access.
Access. That works. Yeah. Something that everyone can access, everyone can use, despite your disability. Yeah. You can use it.
Yeah. That's pretty much exactly what it is. That like people, and specifically making sure that people with disabilities can access like digital information, whether it's like a website or an app or, pretty much anything that you would use a screen to look at, so that they could use it in a way that is equitable, right? That like you can get the same amount of information out of it if you can't see versus if you can. And so I think I'll try to be really quick about this, but like a lot of times like people may not even know how people with vision impairments access information. And so I wanted to quickly run through like different disabilities and how like the different assistive tech that we might use to access information. So like people who are more on the spectrum of like totally blind, that are like less low vision than Case and I, like don't rely on our eyes as much. They use something that's called a screen reader, and a screen reader essentially like reads out loud what's on the screen. And you can kind of like move the focus around on the screen, and it moves like from kind of like you would read in English from top to bottom and left to right. So you can kind of hear in the order in which you would read what's on the screen. You know, Case and I have low vision, so we do use our eyes a lot. And we talked about this in our assistive tech episode, but we use what's called a screen magnifier a lot of the time. So essentially it kind of zooms in on parts of the screen at once, and we can kind of move our mouse to be able to see the entire screen. But in order to do this, we have like a good like mental map of where things are positioned on the screen already. Someone with like a mobility disorder who might have hand tremors or something like that might use like a keyboard to navigate instead of a mouse, because they might have a hard time controlling the pointer. So like if you're ever on a form online and you hit the tab key and you see that the focus moves from like one like form field to another, like your first name to your last name, that is intentional, and it is made so that people who have mobility difficulties, like, you know, hand tremors, one of them, or even just like people who have very limited mobility, but they can hit like a button. They can use that. There are so many types of assistive techs too for various disabilities, especially mobility disorders. Some people who can't move at all have something called a switch controller, where like essentially they can control things with, well, so there's eye movement, but like also it's essentially like it's like a square cursor. I'm doing a bad job of explaining this, but it's like a square cursor, and it will like periodically highlight things on the screen. And when it highlights something that you want, you kind of like nod, and then it'll click it. It's really fascinating.
And you're using your eyes to like go to the one you want?
or like your head movement. Sometimes that can also help. There's so many ways that people have invented to make things usable by people with a variety of disabilities. And like even something as simple as like closed caption is obviously, that's accessibility. Like if you can't hear a video, then at least you could read it.
Right.
So anyway, like there are standards for this in terms of like digital tools. Like there's a list of standards called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, where, you know, we can evaluate, like, say, a website and see if, like, it meets all of the criteria or not. It's actually really hard to be completely accessible. There's always going to be a little something, but these standards were made by, like, the World Wide Web Consortium, and they're constantly being updated, but it tries to like incorporate the needs of all people with disabilities who use websites. So that's my monologue.
No, I think you did a great job of explaining that. And I think you're right on when you say that people often don't even know how people with disabilities access things. They just don't even know because, you know, I've had this thing happen so many times where I'll be on TikTok or YouTube or even with the podcast, like wherever I am, Instagram, wherever, and people will always say, every time I say that I'm blind, but if it's relevant to the conversation, they'll always say, well, how are you typing? How are you on here? How are you using this? And like sometimes they're asking it in a genuinely nice way, like they don't know, but sometimes they're saying it in an accusatory way of like, you're not really blind. How would you be on the internet if you're blind? And like, I mean, I'm ignorant in some places too. Like there are some, even like, you know, mobility stuff, there are some things I don't know how they access things, but I would never like judge and say they can't. I just don't know, you know, every single way that things are accessible. But I think that's something that this is why I'm glad we're doing this episode, and I think it's something that needs to be talked about more.
Right. It's sort of a niche, but it really shouldn't be, because legally, like, people are, especially like companies in the United States, are required to have accessible platforms. And basically what that means is like, if you don't, as a person with a disability, if you can't access certain information, like you have all the right to sue them because you can't get what you want done. And that's not equitable, like just straight up not equitable. Like, and so like there have been so many legal cases with this, with major companies. You could literally just Google accessibility lawsuits and read all about different settlements that were agreed upon. There was a really famous one that actually happened only a few years ago, back in 2019 with Domino's, where this one was famous though because there's the ADA, which just rules for disabilities in general, but it doesn't specifically mention digital spaces. And it's a little harder to govern that because, you know, digital spaces are often international. But essentially, if you conduct business in the United States, it was ruled that you are subject to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, the standards that I mentioned before. And if not, you can be sued. So, like, it is really important, not just because it's the right thing to do, but a lot of the times, like, the threat of suit is actually, like, part of the reason why companies make things better, which is why we're so glad we have those laws in place for us to protect us. And I think, like, if you ever are anywhere, like, and you need something accessible to you, it's never bad to ask. Don't feel like a burden for asking. Even if, like, if you're at church and you would like a bigger print program or, you know, anything like that, you could always ask. And, you know, I mean, it depends on, you know, you don't always have to get the law involved per se if you read, but like you could just ask. Yeah.
And hopefully people would care.
Right, exactly. Because it's like, it helps you not just like access information and get things done, but it also helps you like feel a part of society.
Yeah, of course.
Like, society is on the internet. Imagine if people with disabilities just couldn't use the internet. Like,
oh, I mean, yeah, that would be terrible.
That would be horrible. So it just, I don't know. It's super, super important, and obviously something near and dear to me, and it's also like what I try to help do for a living. But like, but let's talk about like from our, so like I said, Casey and I use like magnification, but let's talk about some things that in our lives we've discovered are not accessible or hard to use.
Oh my gosh.
There's so many.
So we'll start with digital.
Yeah.
So we'll do digital. Welcome to Casey's Rant Corner. I'll start with one and then we can go back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay, this is something that actually, so like Cass said, since we are low vision, we mostly use Zoom. So we do use our eyes. We just have to zoom in to see things. And something that really bothers me, that's almost on every website, oh my gosh, is those pop-ups, and then you can't find your way out of the pop-up because usually there's a tiny, tiny X. And if you're using Zoom, or even if you're not, it's so hard. So, like, I'll, you know, for instance, I'll see a sweater I like, and I'll click on that to go on that website. And then there's a pop-up to sign up for, like, their email newsletter or something like that. And like, you have to X out of it to get to the next page. And, like, it is eventually usually possible, but sometimes you cannot find it.
Yeah.
Like, they purposely make it hard to find, but I'm like, I'm blind and that's not fair to.
Well, and a lot of times it's like a color contrast issue. Like, they make the X super, super faint.
Yeah.
Oh, it's abysmal. And like, okay, so something that we were talking about like this week though, which I've been complaining about for years, and it's also why I don't use Snapchat because it's abysmal, is Instagram stories. I have such a hard time seeing Instagram stories. And I pretty much only will look at them on my iPad where I know the screen is going to be a lot bigger. But, like, y'all, when we zoom in on our phones, the way we do it is it's, like, on an iPhone, you can turn on this setting. You know, you can hear it in our other episode. But, like, we use, like, 3 fingers to kind of move around the screen to see everything and, like, zoom in and out. And on Instagram stories, like, if you touch something in the wrong way, like, it'll skip to the next story. And it's just like, oh, I'm trying to zoom in so I can read the text that people put on the story. And I just like cannot do it. And I have to go back and forth, or I have to take a screenshot and feel really creepy. And
yeah, no, I literally complained to Cass about this just in our daily life. I just like randomly texted her, because here's the thing, like, if you're on an Instagram story and you want to read the text, generally the way a normally sighted person would do it is you can hold down the story with your finger to keep it from turning to the next story, so you can like take the time to read it. But for us, with the, like Cass explained, with the Zoom, you can't hold it down. So it just goes to the next story right when you finally have gotten to the text to read it. It goes to the next story, and we can't really read the text without the Zoom.
Like,
it's so bad. I think on Instagram on Instagram Reels, I think you can pause, but on an Instagram story you can't. And I'm afraid to like take a screenshot, because taking a screenshot is a way around this. You can like go to your camera roll and zoom in on the text, but a lot of times that's a lot of steps and I don't care enough. But also the fact that it kind of freaks me out that it would notify the person that I took a screenshot. And I don't know if Instagram does that, but I know that they've like tried out that feature before, and it always worries me that they're gonna like put it back into play, and then I'm gonna be a creepy stalker who, you know, screenshots.
Right, because like I didn't think that Instagram told people, but like I don't know if when you like look at the people who saw your story, if it shows that like they did.
Well, my sister told me it does show a little like thing next to the person's name.
Okay,
and I know that in private messages it does say so and so took a screenshot in a private message.
Wait, I just took a screenshot of a message. Like, is it like pictures? Is it the pictures?
It's just pictures. It's the pictures.
Thank God. I was just like, that's gonna be so weird. Okay. Wait.
It's pictures.
I want to put this to the test. Like, we should test this.
We should.
One of us should do it to the other one so that we can like.
But it worries me that even if it didn't do it, that like Instagram goes through all these testing phases so much with things though. So that's what scares me.
I don't like it.
So, but I do still watch stories, and a lot of stories I can enjoy because people talk on them sometimes. Right. But when it's text, I'm like, ew, I can't. Nope.
And like,
can't read
I
that.
think this also I don't know. This kind of conversation is starting to remind me of our episode from last week, where we kind of do things because we know that other people do it or other sighted people use it. So like, I'll post on my Instagram stories. And I'll post like concert videos or something, and I'll put some text on there because I know that people do that. But like, personally, I find it like really hard to read usually.
Yeah, no, and we're not always perfect with this either. Like, sometimes we put text on our Instagram stories on the Rare with Flair page, but we try to make it really big.
Right.
And then sometimes also, like, I'll try to talk on the story sometimes too, so that people can actually hear it. And we also always provide alt text, which, if you are an Instagram user and you don't know what this is, when you post a picture, if you scroll down to the advanced settings, yes, to your grid. This is not for the story. But if you scroll down in the advanced settings, there's something called alt text, and you can add an image description there for people who use voiceover on their phone or a screen reader. So
right. I mean, I think it's like kind of obvious that generally if people are using a screen, well, actually this isn't always true. Sometimes people who aren't blind will use screen readers. So sometimes it's helpful for people with dyslexia or just people who have a harder time reading in general. But most screen reader users are almost totally blind, and so generally they can't see pictures. So adding alt text to a picture that you post is really helpful. I feel kind of hypocritical saying that though, because like I don't do it on my like personal Instagram. I just like I don't think I have too many people that are following me that are blind. I have a private account with like a smaller group of followers on there, so we do make sure to do it on our Rare with Flair page, but I'm not always the best at it on my personal either. You know, it's kind of I mean, this is no excuse at all, but sometimes they're harder to write than you would imagine. They are pretty tough to write.
Like, you want to do not too much but not too little, and it's just like,
and like so when I post on the show notes on our website, I'll put alt text on the photos, because for every whether or not you follow us on Instagram, for every episode that we post a different photo of either like a collage of us or the two of us, and on our website there is alt text on those images so you can hear that. But also on our Instagram, You can't put it on videos, right? Can you?
No, so yeah, when I post our little sound bites on Instagram, I have to just put it in the description instead of for the alt text. And some people might be, this is all very confusing, I know, to explain, but we try our best to do what we can to describe photos and videos we post. Other things that really help me, like online in general, is just good fonts and good color contrast. For someone that does have some vision, like, I know a lot of people have their feelings about Amazon, but I do think it's pretty easy to use, and it has that big yellow button for, click to put it in your cart. And I think things like that, without too much going on, pretty simplistic things with colors that I can see. I find that really helpful, because when things get, super muddled, it is hard to navigate for sure.
That's funny, because I have some beef with Amazon's design, because I feel
really?
they use too many words. In order to look through the menu, this isn't as much of an accessibility thing as much as it is just like a general design and user friendliness thing. But if I have to read the entire list to figure out what I want, it takes way too long. But what you're saying, I think, is good. And I think also there's a pretty predictable layout with Amazon. You can kind of foresee where most things are going to be. So that, you generally know where the buy button is. The shopping cart is pretty noticeable. There's pretty decent contrast on everything. So I'd agree with that. But
yeah, how do you feel about fonts and colors, and do you think about that in your job and your day to day?
Right. So I also care about design. I think the thing that people think about when they hear about accessibility for the first time is that, oh, well, everything has to be ugly, or everything has to be extremely high contrast, just black on white, nothing cute or fun or exciting. But it's such a common misconception that being accessible doesn't have to mean being, unappealing or ugly or whatever. I think that also people have that same thought about putting in wheelchair ramps for businesses that only have steps or things like that. I think people's knee-jerk reaction is that oh, it's gonna look gross or weird or out of place, but it's only as out of place as you make it. You can make really beautiful but also accessible designs that pretty much everyone can use and get something out of, which I feel
true.
Is a good segue though to our next topic.
Oh, yes.
Which is
drum roll.
Drum roll. Oh, so accessibility and physical.
I was are you gonna say it or am I?
I thought that you were, and then I didn't. No.
Oh well, real quick though. I did want to just say, and we're gonna do, the reason we're not really touching on this right now is we want to do a whole episode about it, but also audio description in TV and film and plays and all of that
and videos
is super helpful. We've talked about it before. We want to do a whole ep, so that's why we're not gonna linger on it here.
Absolutely, can do a whole ep on this.
We're going to do a whole up on that because I have so much to say. I know you do too. We have so much to say about that. But anyway.
Well, actually, one more thing. The other thing that I was thinking of was besides issues with Zoom, there are sometimes issues where I'll turn up the font size on my phone's settings. So the font in my texts are bigger, and sometimes that will also affect the font in the browser or whatever web page I'm looking at. And sometimes, and this is getting better and better because there are newer standards in the web content accessibility guidelines to address these things. But I don't know if you've ever had this happen, case where you download an app and you open it and it's not the people who made the app, the developers for this company, didn't account for the fact that people could have larger text. And so then all the text is overlapping or cut off, and it looks bad and I can't read anything.
Yes. Oh, that happens all the time. That happens. Yes.
Yeah. So
oh yeah.
That's another technology beef that I, as a person with low vision, have, but...
Yep. I think all low vision people relate to that who do like read,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is a nightmare. Yes, because we all, of course, have our font turned up pretty big, and when websites don't account for that,
It's brutal.
yeah, not all of them do, unfortunately. Yeah, it is brutal. Yes.
So, but accessibility in the physical world.
In the physical world. It sounds like we're like on a TV show entering the physical world.
The physical world.
Well, no, it is a different world, though, like, if you're comparing digital accessibility to real-world accessibility. But they both are a thing. And I think you're so good at explaining it. I want to pass the baton to you. We've talked about it, like, one other time in the past, but the curb cut effect, I think, is like such a good accessibility thing to discuss.
Oh yeah. So the curb cut effect, like we talk about this all the time in accessibility, because it really is just like a great way to express an entire sentiment. And like the underlying thought is that when you design for people with disabilities, a lot of times that ends up helping so many people broadly that you didn't really expect. So a curb cut being like when a curb slants and slopes gently down to meet the street instead of being a step curb. That was initially created for people who use wheelchairs. And obviously, like, I think everyone has taken good use of curb cuts. I think that, with people with strollers, people who are like pulling heavy loads, even people who ride bicycles if they have to be on the sidewalk for some reason. Like, there are a lot of applications for curb cuts, and that's applied to so many accessibility.
Suitcases. And I think it truly is such a true thing that once you make something accessible for one group, it can benefit so many other people. And I think, like we've said before, text messaging was originally created for deaf people, that kind of messaging. And now we all use it, obviously. And I think so many times people probably say, oh, that's such a big change to make, or such a big effort to make for one small group of disabled people. But they don't realize the effect could be great on everybody, and it could have a good effect for everyone if we make these things accessible. And people can, benefit for so many different reasons from these things.
Right. And the other thing to that objection is that 20% of the population is disabled in some way. And already in this podcast, like, we've kind of implied that there are a lot of differences throughout the disabled population. Something that benefits someone who is deaf may not benefit someone who is blind directly, right? But I think it's worth noting that, like, this is a really large group of people. 20% is a lot. And things like closed captioning, like, of course, it was created for the deaf who, generally can't hear well what's being said. But, like, I don't know, you've probably been in a situation where, like, you have to turn the volume down because someone's next to you and you don't want them to hear, and having closed captions, like, you can read it.
Yes, and I can't read closed captions, but I do know that I have a lot of friends and family who use them who have perfect hearing. They just might want to, see it as they hear it, to kind of catch what's being said better.
Oh, yeah. English is my parents' second language. And so, like, whenever we watch, like, British dramas, they'll, like, have to turn on the closed captioning because, like, sometimes they speak too quickly in the accent and they're like, what are they saying? So
it's so funny because with Hamilton, when Hamilton came to Disney Plus, I had a few different people tell me I had to turn on the closed captioning because if you know anything about Hamilton, they rap really fast, and you are gonna miss something, possibly, if you don't have on closed captions. So yeah, I mean, I truly think, like, even if you're perfectly able-bodied and you have no disability at all, you could benefit from a lot of these things. So I would never turn your nose up at making things more accessible because it can only really help. It can't hurt.
Right.
I mean, it might take a little more money and effort to make it that way, but I think in the long run, so worth it. What are some other things, Cass, like, in the real world that you find accessible and that have helped you, like?
Yeah, so like something that I, as like a person with low vision, make a lot of use of without even really thinking too much about it is like places that have consistent layouts. Like I with a grain of salt, right? Sometimes they're like slight variations of each other, but in general, like when I'm at a restaurant, the bathrooms are usually like in the back or somewhere in the corner. And so I can use that assumption to go places. Like whenever I go to a Starbucks, a lot of them are laid out in similar ways, so I kind of know what I need to do where. But sometimes that only gets me so far though. Like have you ever walked into the kitchen on accident?
Yes. Oh, yeah, like at a restaurant when you're trying to find the bathroom and you just walk into like the staff area or the kitchen. Yes, no, I've definitely done that. Yeah, it can, I think in that, I agree with you. I like similar layouts. I think like 85% of the time it helps me, and then the other percent it like hurts me though, because I feel like sometimes if you're expecting, like, let's say like, oh, the bathroom's always in the back. Well, what if it's not for once and then you like don't know? But I think for the most part, no, I think that I never really thought about that as something I rely on, but I do. It's kind of just like you know it's there, and that's so true. I think one for me is like, of course, crosswalks that beep and make and talk and make noise.
Audible crosswalks are so good.
Amazing. Also, when I used to take the subway or the bus or whatever, having those announcements
the stop announcements.
Yes, the announcements that tell you where you're stopping at, like this is 42nd Street. I mean, that would literally get me through because I could not see where we were, and I wasn't going to sit there and count every stop, and then sometimes they don't even stop at every stop.
Right.
And so there would be times I wouldn't be able to hear the announcement for whatever reason.
Sure. Oh my gosh.
And that would like panic me because I was like,
or like when they would like turn it off or it wasn't working or something. I've had that happen on the bus, and I'm like panicking. Like
yes. Oh, it's terrible. But when it works, it's so great, and I'm so grateful that they have that option for people who can't see where you are. I mean, I can't look out the window like other people and read where we are. And sometimes the numbers on the wall would be on the wall and they'd be huge, but still it's great to have that crutch when I can't see what's going on.
Well, and like with the bus, like my workaround whenever that is happening is like I can pull up the stop map on my phone and like see in real time, like, okay, we're approaching this stop. And that's really helpful. Like Apple Maps has a pretty decent layout of bus stops, but I feel like that wouldn't really help in the subway because I feel like a lot of times underground you lose self-service. So
yes, that's true. Yeah, you can't always rely on your cell phone. You've got to rely on that voice of the man.
I love the subway man voice though. I feel like his presence to me is so like calming. I'm like, yes, please tell me where I'm getting off.
I used to have all those memorized, like all his little spiels he would do, but not anymore. But no, he's great. And speaking of subways,
what? Oh, I was gonna.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, wait, what were you gonna say?
The truncated domes.
Yes. Okay. Those are so helpful to know where the tracks are.
So those are like little bumps, and I'm sure you've noticed them or felt them. They were added for blind people. They're at the train station, but they're also when you're about to cross a street, right when the street slopes down, there are these domes that are like tactile that you can feel with your cane or your feet that tell you, hey, stop, you're about to get hit by a car or a train, possibly. And you don't want to... You don't want to go in the train tracks, so those are really, really helpful.
They definitely go by so many names. I feel like I've heard them called like those bumps, like the bumpy
those
things.
Bumps. Well,
like...
that's what I usually call them, but I remember the real name is
actually. So in some countries, I think I've seen photos of places like Shanghai, but it's really cool because they make use of those like tactile markers on the ground where you know. In the pictures I've seen, Shanghai is a huge major city. So, like, the sidewalks are also really wide. But they have these, like, raised lines, essentially, that, like, a cane user can use to kind of, like, guide them to know that they're heading, like, straight or where, like, an entrance is, which is really cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's, like, I really want to use them and see how it feels, you know?
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
But I feel like the other thing that is, like, speaking of tactile things on the ground, the antithesis to this is cobblestones.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yeah,
yes, cobblestones are I mean, they're beautiful looking, I guess.
They're so pretty.
Man, for a cane, though?
For a wheelchair, too.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Or a stroller.
For
literally anything with wheels.
For anything. Yeah. Oh, man. Ooh. Yeah.
I think, like, as people who, like, don't have good depth perception, it's hard because, like, the cane isn't going to do a great job because it hits everything. But then sometimes, like, some of them are higher than others. So, like, I stumble around and trip because, like, it's hard to tell what's at the same level with the cobblestone. It's rough.
Oh, yes.
Any other built environment? Actually, so in the built environment, there are standards for web. There are kind of general guidelines for the built environment, and they're called universal design. And so they're things that talk about, like, the size and height of where things should be, and considering those principles when making, I don't know, when putting things together architecturally or design wise, to make sure that, like, it's usefully placed for everyone, because people who are wheelchair users or are kids or are people with dwarfism, like, they may need something at a lower height than your average average height person. And so obviously you can't accommodate to everybody, because, you know, there are people that are also 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
But trying to be the most helpful to the broadest group of people.
Definitely. Yes. Well,
I think we
have...
Oh, yeah!
Ma! This is a game we haven't done in a while.
It's been a minute since we did a word association game.
Yes, and this was Cass's idea. She was like, let's do that word association again. And it's
I love
just where
that,
we
like,
say
originally it was Case's idea, though.
A ridge, but you remembered. I had forgotten we ever did this. And we just say a word and come up with the first story or association in our mind, and it's pretty fun.
Are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Go!
Okay, I'll give you your first word.
Tell me.
Or words in this case. Spelling bee.
Oh my god! Okay, so I was always a really good speller, and I feel like it's really funny because spelling is one of those things that you're either really good at or you're really not.
Me, on the opposite end of the spectrum.
I don't know. I feel like this is not based in science even a little bit, but I feel like I've noticed that people who tend to be better at math and at pattern recognition tend to be better at spelling.
I think this is 100% true. Yes, I've noticed that, because I'm really good at all the other parts of English and I like reading, but I'm terrible at spelling. So I think it's a different part of the brain. Like, I genuinely don't think it's the same.
It took me a long time to understand grammar, but, like, things like spelling and math were a lot easier.
Yeah,
for me.
no,
I don't know.
No, not spelling. But anyway,
so spelling bee. So, I'm trying to remember how old I was. I think I was in, like, 5th grade or something. And I ended up getting to the district spelling bee. So, like, I
oh my gosh,
won my school spelling bee because I was a nerd.
Really? Oh, I love it. So, I love it.
I was in the district bee, and so you never forget the words.
Oh, the word
that you messed up as a child.
Oh, what was it?
It was grotto, and I'm really embarrassed because, like, it's one of those words in English with the T's that are, like, rolled a little bit, that aren't, like, the strong T. Because if it was pronounced grotto, I would have known that it was spelled with 2 T's. But I practiced a bunch for this, but still, I didn't remember Ariel and her grotto. So how embarrassing I definitely thought of for me. But, like, I sassed the announcer.
Oh, of course you did.
It's like, well, it would have been helpful to pronounce it the correct way. And I, like, sat down. It's just like, oh.
So you spelled it with one T. Is that
I
how you
spelled
did
it with
wrong?
a D.
Oh, with a D. I see.
Yeah.
I was wondering if it was a D or one T. Well,
I'll never forget.
I think it's the announcer's fault too. So
I know that's how it's pronounced, but anyway.
It's fine.
My word for you. That was a really good one. My word for you is brownie.
Brownie. When I think of brownies, I think of my sister because she makes the best brownies ever. And I don't know how or what I don't even know what the recipe is. It might even be a box recipe, really.
That's okay.
But
Box
I think of the
good.
first after she got married, her and her husband moved into an apartment, and he was out of town once, and I spent the night at her new place, and it felt so cool and grown up, because she and she made me brownies, and it was very good. Yes. Okay, my next one for you is rocket ship.
Rocket ship. I don't know. Well, I'm thinking of I've rewatched Jane the Virgin, which is one of my favorite shows ever, and I rewatch it periodically. I have to tell myself not to rewatch it as often because then I get tired of it. But at the end, they're recording this telenovela that takes place in outer space. So that's what I'm thinking of.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yeah, it doesn't have to necessarily be a story. It can be just an association. So that totally checks out.
All right. So my word for you is birthday party.
Ooh, birthday party. I'm going to think of, I really was blessed growing up to have some fun birthday parties. And I think one of my favorite ones, I don't know, we had a few, but I went to a movie theater with some of my friends and saw the Rugrats movie.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's perfect for you.
And it was very me. But yeah, that was, I think, my favorite childhood birthday party.
Oh,
there were some fun ones, though. My one for you is recess.
This reminds me of being blinded by the sun constantly, then just because it's so bright outside and blind child. But I remember really enjoying playing on the swings because I feel like so many of the loner kids always played on the swings.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Me. That's hilarious.
But it kind of makes me miss swinging on a swing. There's something very relaxing about that.
There is. I love a rocking motion. Oh my gosh, I love it.
So soothing. It's so soothing. I used to because I was Daredevil child. Did you ever jump off the swings?
Oh yeah, I did. I wasn't even Daredevil child, but I did love doing that, and I loved twisting the swing as far as we could, and then spinning out. Yes. And we would do all kinds of things. My friends and I would try to sit on the swing together, cross our legs and try to swing together. I mean, there were so many. I'm shocked we didn't break a bone on the swings, right? Because we were always finding new ways to swing on the swings, or swinging on your stomach.
Oh, that hurt
on your stomach
after a while.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm surprised we could do any of this actually as
honestly,
children.
Children are very forgiving, I guess. They'll bounce around a lot.
Pain. I'm oh, my back,
I know, right? I feel like if I tried to jump off a swing, my knees would crumble beneath me.
Oh no, yeah, no. That would hurt.
Okay, my word for you is sunset.
Sunset. Ooh. My immediate thought was I saw the sunrise recently at the beach with my dad, and that was nice, but that's not a set. A sunset. I mean, I still, obviously, even though it's such a cliche answer, I still do think of the beach because the sunset on the beach, it's always the time. Beautiful. It's actually quite stressful, though, because it's always the time of day you really want to get pictures.
That's
but you have
true.
to be there at like the perfectly right time, because then it's either too light or too dark, and everybody else is out there taking pictures at the sunset, so then it's crowded. So I don't know if the beach at the sunset is actually relaxing or extremely crowded and stressful for pictures. Because we are in the Instagram age, and that is what people are doing on the beach at sunset. But
of course.
you know,
you gotta add to that grid.
Yes, gotta add to that grid. Gotta get your feed going. But no, that was fun.
That was good. I love a word association.
Yes. Oh, me too. Very fun. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you for being here.
We will see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.